Well, hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Dunswell Zoo. This time we are building for the Quokka and a mystery species. Ooh, all will be revealed soon. So this is the space for the Quokka, and this is the space for the mystery species. Ooh. So we're starting with the Quokka, and much like with the Tasmanian devil revamp habitat, I'm using the viewing domes from the free update 1.15, and the habitat, the first thing I had in mind for the Quokka was I want a hill. I want it to be a hillside. I don't know why that came to mind, but that was what I was rolling with essentially, was I want a hillside Quokka habitat. And I get something close to that. I'm not 100% happy with how the habitat turns out in the end. It'll be something I can maybe tweak and perfect sort of moving forward. But it does its job for now. And I think that's the main thing. It's a very big habitat for Quokka. There aren't a lot of Quokka in the habitat to start with. So we probably will breed these cute little critters and get some baby Quokkas, because what's cuter than a Quokka but a baby Quokka? So as far as I can tell, Quokka are exceptionally rare in captivity outside of Australia, and even then within Australia they're not that common in captivity. But there's a zoo in Japan and there's Wilhelm Zoo in Germany that have Quokka, but for the zoo in Japan I couldn't find the name of the zoo. Nor if the Quokka are even still alive there. The most recent photo I could find was from March 2023, so March this year, and it does show the Quokka enclosure, but it's empty. There are no Quokka in the habitat. There used to be Quokka kept in the UK in a few different collections, but at the time of recording this video there aren't any, nor have there been for I think about 20 years, something like that. So yeah, that's that. So you can see here I'm just working on that hillside, that sort of vibe that I was going for. But back to the Quokka. So they live for about 10 years and they gestate for about 30 days. They're in the pouch for 6 months before emerging, and then they only usually have one young at a time, which is fairly common with sort of kangaroos, quokkas, wallabies, marsupials in general. Size-wise, very, very small little creatures. 16 to 21 inches, which is about, 40 to 55 centimetres. So they really are quite small. And of course the tail, maximum of like 30 centimeters in length, and they don't weigh much either. Sort of 11 pounds is the maximum, which is about 5 kilos. Is not a lot at all, really. They're just so adorably small and adorable, just adorable in general. The fence we're using here for the Quokka habitat is the same one that I used for the Numbat habitat. Nothing uniquely created for this habitat. So the Quokkas belong to an order called Diprotodontia, which means 2 forward teeth, and it's made up of about 155 marsupial species, including quokkas, kangaroos, wallabies, koalas, wombats, and possums. And quokkas are known to contract Duchenne muscular dystrophy and were instrumental in finding a treatment that may cure them as well as humans from the disease. And what you're seeing on screen now is me trying to build a cover for that obnoxious viewing dome entrance. Why is it so big? As ruminants, they often swallow food without chewing and then regurgitate it as something called a cud, and then chew it again to extract all the nutrients from the food. And quokkas can store fat in their tails and use it when food is scarce. Now, quokkas generally speaking, are found on Rottnest Island, which holds a birthday celebration every September, which includes free travel from the mainland to the island, complimentary admission for children, and activities for people to take part in. And quokkas are often referred to as the happiest animals in the world due to their friendly disposition and appearing to smile all the time. However, it's important to remember that quokkas are not tame and do not make good pets. They might be cute and they might be small and herbivorous, but do not be mistaken. They are not pet material. They haven't had, the thousands of years to domesticate themselves like cats and dogs have, for example. As far as the quokka habitat is concerned, they live in shrubland and inland wetlands and forests. On islands such as Rottnest Island, quokkas use a variety of habitats with sufficient cover, while the mainland quokkas use dense vegetation in swamps, usually in forests as well. The quokka habitat is generally cool, shady shelter, and lots of hiding places, and that's something I go for in the habitat, is giving them lots of shade and lots of sort of grasses to dart in and out of and hide about. And it looks okay. It doesn't quite look how I wanted it to look at the end, so we might tweak it moving forward, of course. They generally return to the same shelter every day, so they're domesticated in that sense that they'll always know where their home is. But beyond that, they're not domesticated. And they're actually nocturnal, so they go out at night to feed on plant matter, and they use paths, not just like human-made paths, but paths that they make to escape from predators. Most quokkas will take shelter in thickets or cool protected areas during the day. On particularly hot summer days, the males may fight for possession of the best shady shelter sites, and the availability of these shelters is a limiting factor in quokka populations. Unfortunately, because the quokkas are vulnerable with a decreasing population. The largest quokka population can be found on Rottnest Island, which is a popular car-free oasis 11 miles off the mainland coast, with miles of sandy beaches and forests and no predators. Quokka shed their nocturnal lifestyle here and readily mix and mingle with visitors. As a result, they're also becoming blind, which is unfortunate because they're out in the daytime looking at the sun and they're not made for that. And quokkas are just one of several Australian terrestrial native mammals that have suffered severe declines after the introduction of the red fox in the southwest of Western Australia in the early 1930s. Today, on the mainland, predation by feral cats and foxes, habitat loss, fire patterns, disease, these are the main threats to quokka. The island, it tends to just be disease and interactions with humans, but on the mainland, definitely feral cats and foxes, habitat loss, fire patterns, and disease. So I had all this in mind when building the habitat, so there's a lot of planting. Most of it is bigger than the quokka because they like places to sort of hide and dart about in. But also because they're so rare in captivity, there aren't many examples of what a good quokka habitat looks like. So I just had to sort of run with how I would probably do it. And initially I was going to use this red oak grass and realised it was far too small and it would take me far too long. So I used the buffalo grass instead, and we just make it a nice grassy hillside. And then sort of the flat bit at the front of the habitat where the logs are and the feeding station, we make that sort of sandy and dirty and less planted, because it would be heavily used, of course, so all the plant matter would be trampled. What else can I tell you about the quokka? I've never seen one in reality, unfortunately, partly because they are exceptionally rare in captivity and they haven't been kept in the UK for about 20 years. I mean, I'm nearly 28, so I definitely missed my chance to see a quokka in the UK. So, now we move on to our mystery species, and I am very happy to introduce you to the Mertens water monitor. So this was a mod, or is a mod rather, created by Leaf. It is not part of the Oceania pack, and it's endangered, so I wanted to include it, and we don't have any reptiles in the Australia house. It's all mammals, so it's nice to get some reptile representation in here. And essentially, the Mertens water monitor functions very similar to sort of the Asian water monitor and the Nile monitor, but generally just a fraction of the size. They're endemic to northern Australia and have a wide-ranging sort of lifestyle. They actively forage, they're opportunistic predators, and they are typically found in aquatic or riparian habitats. Riparian habitats are the areas sort of between land and a body of moving water, like a stream or a river or a brook, for example. And Mertens water monitors are found in coastal and inland waters across much of northern Australia, from the Kimberley region of Western Australia across the top end of the Northern Territory of the Gulf country to the western side of the Cape York Peninsula in far north Queensland. Quite small for a monitor species, really. They grow to a total length of about 2 meters, which is 6.6 foot including the tail. But that's the total length. The average is about 1 meter for both the males and the females, and they're typically dark brown to black, with cream and yellow spots. The underparts are paler with white and yellowish sort of tinges to it, with grey mottling in the throat and bluish grey bars across the chest. And again, generally speaking, the tail is about 1.5 times the length of the head and the body. So the tail is sort of bigger than the head and the body combined. As it would come as no surprise, the Mertens water monitor is a strong swimmer and seldom far from water. It is often seen basking on midstream rocks and logs and on branches overhanging swamps, lagoons and waterways throughout its range. When disturbed, it will simply drop into the water, where it can stay submerged for very long periods of time. The Mertens water monitor feeds on both land and in the water, mainly on fish, frogs, crabs, shrimps, amphipods, carrion, crayfish, terrestrial vertebrates, insects, spiders, and unfortunately, human rubbish whenever it's available. It has a great sense of smell and can dig up prey when foraging, including the eggs of freshwater turtles. As it is a reptile, it lays eggs in a burrow, usually with egg laying taking place early in the dry season and hatching in the following wet season. They'll typically hatch within 200 to 300 days after laying, so nearly a full year, depending on the temperature, and the hatchlings are able to swim immediately. So they're born and they can swim. Mertens water monitor is threatened by the spread of cane toads through its range, because cane toads are poisonous, and so the Mertens water monitor becomes poisoned after eating them, and because of this the Mertens water monitor is listed as endangered. Now, this habitat, unfortunately, might be the first one to be removed. When the habitat's finished, it only ends up being big enough for 2 individuals. Like, literally just big enough for the 2 individuals. I think there's only something like 15 meters to spare on the land and water area. So when these 2 breed, there may well be overcrowding issues. Now, of course, I could turn off overcrowding in the sandbox settings, but that turns off overcrowding for all species, not just individual species. And I do like to keep overcrowding on for sort of realism, just because. The other workaround for this, which I think is more likely, is Leaf could adjust the space requirements for the Merton's water monitor to better reflect how they are typically housed in captivity. There are a few zoos in America that have Merton's water monitor, and they're generally housed in very small sort of tanks and vivariums and things like that. That they're not housed in anything like what I'm building for them right now. And even then, what I'm building for them right now, even I think that's a bit too big. But as far as the game's concerned, it's only just big enough. So something to keep in mind if you are wanting Merton's water monitor in your game. It requires quite a fair bit of room. I can't see a reason why Leaf wouldn't adjust the terrain requirements to better reflect how these animals are kept in captivity. It should just be a simple coding change. It's nothing massive per se, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, Merton's water monitor in captivity, their enclosures seem pretty standard for sort of semi-aquatic reptiles, so it's nothing special. Like, something that I'm building now, I reckon it'd be suitable for a Komodo dragon, something that sort of size, but there's no way that Merton's water monitor would be housed in anything like this. So we'll see what happens, but for now this is what they've got, and that's why it could possibly be the first habitat to be removed, because technically speaking it isn't big enough for breeding. It's only just big enough for the 2 individuals, and they can have up to 8 young in a go, so yeah, nowhere near big enough. There'd be overcrowding issues and stuff like that. It's not particularly humane. So yeah, what else can I tell you about this? Essentially, at this point, there's only one animal left that I would want to add to the Australasia zone, and that would be the kookaburra. Of course, we don't know if we're going to get a kookaburra. We could get it in a walkthrough exhibit, or we could get it as a free-flying habitat animal if we ever get free-flying birds or free-flying habitat animals. The kookaburra, I just think it's an iconic Australian species, and for that reason alone it deserves a space in the zoo, and I would put it next to the Tarkahare. But yeah, after these 2 habitats are finished, the Quokka and the Merton's water monitor, I do consider the Australasia zone to be finished. I know I said that before, but I also said unless they had the Quokka. And lo and behold, they added the Quokka. And then obviously I came across the Merton's water monitor, and I was like, do you know what? It's endangered. We need some reptile representation in the Australasia house, because it's just mammals. Yeah, we've got the butterflies and the giant burrowing cockroaches, of course. They're not mammals, but the main attractions are all mammals. So I wanted some reptilian representation. So I wanted this to be detailed. So it's got a sort of bird front, which makes doing a roof incredibly difficult. I don't know if anyone else has been having issues with this lately. I think I mentioned it in the last episode. Stuff hasn't been lining up to the grid, and I don't know whether it's since the new update or if it's a free build issue. But stuff doesn't line up to the grid, which is incredibly annoying when you're trying to build things on a grid. But yeah, this custom roof, I go for a sort of tin look. I wanted that outback sort of shack appearance to this habitat, and we go for this custom roof, what I'm doing now. And the reason why is I wanted a shaded area, not because, you know, the lizards need to cool off, because they don't, the water monitors, just because I wanted them to have somewhere that was away from the guests, if that makes sense, like somewhere that's not open topped, somewhere that's quieter, and that's what I do here. I do actually put some basking lamps in at a later point. You'll see that in this video, I think, if I remember correctly. And I was thinking about putting like anti-climbing things in, but they wouldn't be able to climb up there anyway. You know, it's a smooth wall, and they've got no reason to climb. Everything they need is in this habitat, so there's very little need for them to escape. I think so anyway. So what we've got here is the in-game glass barriers, just the normal ones that you sort of drag in and you can extend them that way. And I'm just covering them up with some plaster segment pieces, just because I want it to feel sort of steady. So it's holding back quite the body of water, so it couldn't really look flimsy. But getting everything lined up was a nightmare, and I do give up at one point. Something doesn't line up, and I'm just like, you know what, I don't care. No one's going to notice it. So what's the point? So yeah, that's all I can really say about this habitat, really, is it only just meets the requirements for the Mertens water monitor, and I hope that's something that gets tweaked in the future by the mod master himself, Leaf. So what else can I tell you about Dunswell Zoo in general? So we're coming up to the end of the Pantanal zone soon. So the next episode will be the Pampas deer. Then we've got the Geldes monkey, Geldes marmoset, something like that. And then we're going to start the jaguar. Now, I had sort of earmarked that it's going to take 3 episodes to sort of do the jaguar habitat, which would be, the first episode would be the initial sort of shell, all the construction stuff. The second episode would be dividing the habitats up and specialising them, because the jaguar complex is going to house multiple jaguars, but there's going to be one side for breeding, and then the other side is going to be for individuals that have been rescued or they're retired from the breeding program and they need somewhere to stay. So older jaguars would probably be housed there, so we need things that are more elderly friendly. And then the third episode would be probably the breeding enclosure and finishing everything off, because the breeding enclosure is going to be the biggest of them all, because of course that houses 2 jaguars, a male and a female, and it needs to have the space for cubs, and it needs to have lots of landscaping and enrichment and blah 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 blah. And then after that we're in episode 40. So cinematic time. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have enjoyed this video. There's plenty more Planet Zoo content already on the channel and plenty more Planet Zoo content to come. Go check out my update video if you haven't already. It does explain a few changes that may come to the channel depending on how things pan out. You can find me on Instagram and X at JW_YT. I tend to be more active on Instagram. Ignore the floating water monitor. It's just an issue with swimming animals at the moment in the game. Yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Stay safe, stay kind, and until the next time, my friends, enjoy the cinematics, and I shall see you all next time. Bye bye for now.